My dad bought me a Yamaha Mini Enduro when I was 7. And it was a payment for helping him with this project. He had to chop a bunch of wood for a bunch of trees, and he'd be chopped up and bundled up. And he's like, hey, I'll make you a deal. Help me out. It's going to be all weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We've got to do this job. Once we get it done, I'll either get you a go-kart, a 3-wheeler, because they didn't have 4-wheelers back then, or a motorcycle. And so I had 3 days of bundling wood and working to think about what I wanted. And some kids down the street had a little taco mini bike, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I was like, all right. And then my dad stepped it up and got me a Mini Enduro, which was way cooler than a mini bike. And that was the start right there. And I was playing football and baseball at the time because my dad's dream for me was to be a kicker on a pro football team because, the kicker never gets hurt. They just go out there and kick the ball and make their money. And I got on that motorcycle, and within a few months, I was telling my dad, I'm not playing baseball or football anymore. I just want to ride bikes. I was all in motorcycles, got a YZ80 when I was 11, started racing, really got into it, and then really into racing Indian Dunes and, Saddleback and Carlsbad, all those places at, 11, 12, 13 years old. And then when I was 14, unfortunately, my parents split up and the motorcycles went away. And so next best thing was BMX. And so I got into BMX, and I happened to coincidentally meet the owner of BMX Action Magazine and his son, R.L. Osborne. I met him at a local BMX track, and we became best friends, and I hung out at the house. And next thing you know, I'm going on photo shoots and meeting Bob Harrow, who came to be the artist for the magazine, and just got into BMX. And then I kind of turned that into my thing for a while. And then when I was 18 and I was able to buy my own motorcycle, I bought another bike again. For me, I kind of grew up with it. So my dad had his own business. He had a glass shop in Redondo Beach, cutting glass and putting in windows and stuff. And my mom worked for an entrepreneur that did thermal systems for aerospace, like heating rocket boosters and stuff. And so I saw both of them kind of working entrepreneurially in that field. And then when I met R.L. Osborne and the Osborne family over in Torrance, they were starting a magazine. And I saw them start a magazine from scratch. And then I met Bob Harrow, and he started making number plates, and just watched all around me. And I'm like, I can do this. And even as a little kid, I would have ideas on how to make something better. So I kind of felt like that was always in me. And then, and I saw people around my age kind of doing it, like just winging it. Like, I'm going to make a BMX part. So I started doing that. And that's how it all got started. So at that time, I was in the mountain bike industry, core bicycle components, and we were making seat posts and stems, things like that. But I was riding motocross almost every weekend. Anytime I had off that we weren't at Mountain Bike Nationals or whatever, I was over at De Anza Raceway, racing my CR125. And one Saturday, I was out there practicing, and I broke my clutch lever. And on the way home, I'm telling myself, you better stop at Huntington Honda and pick up a replacement clutch lever, because there was no vendor out there on Sunday morning races. Get home, it's summer, I pass out on the couch in the living room, and I totally forgot to go to Huntington Honda and get a clutch lever. And I wasn't going to drive an hour out there to see if somebody had one I could borrow. So that was it. I kind of moped around the garage, and a buddy of mine came over, and I'm looking at my bike, and I'm like, man, the pegs fold up and down, and the shift lever moves around, but the levers are fixed. And I'm like, why can't we put it? And I mentioned to my buddy, Johnny Severin, who's a good friend of Don Maida's. I said, hey, why don't they put a pivot on the lever so they fold out and they won't break? And Johnny's like, dude, that's a great idea. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's kind of cool. And I actually presented it to my partners in the mountain bike company, Core, and they were like, no, we don't want to do motorcycle stuff. We just want to do bicycle stuff. So I kind of put it under my hat, and that was 1995. And then I had sold my interest out in 98 to them and started working on what was to be ASV's first product, folding unbreakable lever. After the experience with Core, I realized that I need a machinist. I need a machinist, engineer type person to help that. So I found Bob Barnett, who we all know from Arc Levers. He was a good friend of mine. He had a company that made mountain bike parts. And we both kind of realized, wow, the mountain bike business is dying. We need to do something else. And so I invited him over for tacos at my little shop I had after I'd sold Core. I was doing some consulting, things like that. Told him about the lever idea, and he's like, hey, that's pretty cool. And so he helped engineer and design kind of the first folding lever for me. And then from there, basically, unfortunately, we parted ways. He had different ideas and wanted to do something different. And I had made it clear, too, because when I made my little list from Core, number one was logo upside down. Number two was no partners. I didn't want any partners because I had partners and it didn't work out. And he really wanted to be a partner and I didn't. And that was where we kind of had our differences. I really wanted to do it on my own. So we parted ways. But anyhow, that's how you do it generally. You have someone help you. If you're not an engineer or a machinist yourself, you find someone to help you get the first prototypes going. From Core, my previous businesses, I knew that I wanted to make the product as universal as possible because a lot of part numbers is a headache and you don't know which ones are going to sell or not. So the very first ASV levers were clutch levers. And back then we didn't have hydraulic because we started, I was getting it going like 98, 99, 2000, we launched it. KTM wasn't a thing back then. And so it was Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki, all cable operated. So I had clutch levers machined locally in Huntington Beach here. And then I bought perches from Sunline. And I would put my lever on a Sunline perch and I sold it as a universal clutch lever. And that worked out pretty good. And as far as any of the initial problems, we had things like, when we were testing it, it would, like the little stop or something wasn't beefy enough and it would bend or crack, where the lever stops after it swings back. Springs, at first the springs weren't stiff enough. So just typical R&D things that I kind of knew through the years of doing that with the mountain bike business. The logo was actually kind of like engineered, not to be the name. I didn't care about the name. I kind of learned through marketing with my BMX companies I had and the mountain bike company that the name didn't matter. It's you make the name doesn't make you. And a lot of people kind of get that backwards. And when I had Core, we made stems. In fact, there's a stem right here. I'll grab for you. And these stems were threadless, where it goes on the steer tube, and they could flip for different angles. And the problem was my Core logo would be upside down. And when I sold my interest in Core, I made a list of all the things I would do different when I started my next company. And one of them was to make a logo that could flip right side up and upside down. And that was the whole thing. And the other problem we had was machining the logo into the aluminum. It wasn't easy. My partners in Core would be like, that logo is so hard to machine in there. So I'm like, okay, I want a logo that flips upside down, right side up, and also looks like a machine made the logo. And that's where the ASV logo came. Didn't do any schooling for it. I kind of winged it. And I worked at GT Bicycles for a while. I had sold Dyno. I'd started this company called Dyno, and I'd sold it to GT. Worked there for a year or two while we were transitioning the sale and helped do marketing and advertising. And I learned a lot from Richard Long, the founder of GT. He was a strong businessman, grew GT into a gigantic corporation from a bike shop. And so there was people like that. Jim Gennard from Oakley. When I got sponsored by Oakley, I got to go to Oakley all the time and hang out with Dana Duke and Jim Gennard and really learn from those guys as well. But I'd have to say most of what I learned was kind of like with Core were mistakes from the past. And that's always advice I give to young people when they ask me like, hey, what can you tell me about, running your own business? And my advice that I like to give now is like, don't be afraid of failure. Failure is just a chance to start over and do it differently the next time and learn from that. And if you do that, I think you're more bound for success. Core was successful. I mean, and it's funny because we sponsored Eli Tomac's dad, John Tomac, ran our Core products. And so we had a lot of success and everything. But I also learned that I didn't want to own my own machine shop because my partners did. And they had nothing but headaches with the machines breaking down, employees not showing up, all kinds of stuff like that. So you learn from certain things, what works, what doesn't work. And so there's nothing wrong with, moving on and learning from your mistakes. How that came about was we had noticed after about 5 or 6 years in the business that there was a cycle. We were super busy in the fall and winter and spring, but in the summer things would really slow down for us. And so I had friends at that time that rode street bikes and they were always bugging me, and our customers were too. And that's another funny story too. A lot of times customers would actually be our kind of instigator for new products. And one of them was street. And we get customers calling up saying, hey, I have your clutch lever on my GSXR Suzuki track bike. And I'm like, we don't make clutch levers for that. And they're like, well, it's just a cable operated clutch with a perch, just like what a dirt bike would use. But you don't make a front brake for the master cylinder on my street bike. And I'm like, okay. And so we're like, well, maybe we should make street bike stuff. And it also dawned on us that, hey, that'll keep us busier in the summer when street bikes are more popular. And so that's kind of how it got started. And again, I did kind of make a mistake in the beginning. I went and designed the new street bike levers basically like our dirt bike levers. But, not realizing that the street bike levers already had a pretty nice little dial for adjusting the reach on them. And we were still using like a screw and a nut to kind of set it. And at first the customers, and we debuted it like the MotoGP at Laguna Seca, and we were selling them, and all of a sudden the customers are coming back going, hey, this is harder to adjust than the OEM levers, so what's the deal? And I'm like, oh, you're right. And I literally bought them all back, packed up shop, came back to ASV, and re-engineered our street bike levers from the ground up to be their own different levers. Even the way they connect together are the opposite of our dirt levers. And realize that when you go into a new market like that, you really need to specialize in that market. Cool. And that's never been our thing. Like that, when Bob and I kind of parted ways, I was like, all right, he can do the team thing, and I'm gonna sell a lot of levers. I'm gonna make levers for the everyday guy, not for the factory pros. But he retired 2 years ago, sold the brand, and the team started calling us like, hey, can you come give us some levers to test and develop levers for us? And so we've been so busy, and I'm having fun with it. I can kind of see why Barnett was enjoying it, because it is kind of fun hanging out with those guys and testing with them. And some guys are a pain in the neck because they're never happy. But it's a challenge, but also it's making our product better. And that's what I'm excited about. In fact, this all new off-road lever that we're coming out with is based on what we've been doing for the teams. So I'm excited about how it's also making our products better. Yeah, it has. And I've never stopped racing and riding, other than I had a little incident with my finger about 6 weeks ago at Glen Helen, but I'm going back out riding this weekend and getting back into racing with some of the clubs I like to race with. So there's definitely a passion part of it. But yeah, I love being at the track. And Southern California people probably know that we're at the track a lot. You see an ASV tent and truck there with tech support where we help our customers and take care of people. So, and I find that's always been our marketing thing, is they're like really good customer service. But I love the other aspect as well with the factory teams and going to the private test tracks and working with the riders. And now my son coming through. It's a lot of fun. It's also through my years, even through my early BMX bicycle years, mountain biking, all that, I've run into a problem where I came up with a concept for something and then it was copied. And then I would hear from someone saying, I copied this copier, this other entity that actually copied me. And so when I was starting ASV, I was playing around with ASV Racing or ASV Industries or whatever. And I thought, you know what? I'm an inventor. A lot of stuff I've done is patented. I got patents on the wall. So I'm going to call it inventions, just to be different, but also to find a URL and a trademark. It makes it a little bit easier when you have a unique name. But I really wanted the company to stand for that we create our own stuff. We invented this stuff. We don't copy anybody. Everything we do is our own ideas, and it's mine. And that's kind of what I wanted ASV to be, was an outlet for my ideas to get actually put to market. And we've accomplished that. So I'm pretty stoked on that.